Welcome to episode 52 of the Milk Making Minutes. I'm finally home from my epic road trip with my kids, so I'm a little bit late getting this one out, but most people don't listen on the same day it comes out anyway. So I'm glad you're here. And I thought I would talk about lessons that I have learned or reconfirmed in doing 50 episodes so far, over 50 now, of the Milk Making Minutes. So here are the 7 lessons that I have learned in no particular order over hearing these stories and doing the additional research that I have done for the podcast. So grab some coffee, buckle up. When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. I may have thought I was prepared, but having known only a handful of people who had ever breastfed and only seeing it up close from a couple of them, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a lactation consultant, and a childbirth educator. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh, and I welcome you to the Milk Making Minutes, where we explore breastfeeding experiences through the lens of systemic barriers, so that you know your breastfeeding struggles are not your fault and your triumphs really are the miracles you feel they are. Number 1, your feelings about how you feed your baby matter as much as how you actually feed your baby. And there are many people who will try to dismiss those feelings, care providers, family members, partners. But those feelings are valid. Many people will try to say to you, just focus on the healthy baby. All that matters is that your baby is healthy. And that is true. We all want our babies to be healthy, but the way you feel about how you get there matters too. And it's okay for you to feel however you feel. If you feel sadness about a lost experience, if you feel angry about how things have turned out for you, if you feel mixed emotions, if you feel relief about finally making a different choice, even though it's been hard for you to get to that choice, whatever your feelings are, they are valid and it is okay. And anyone who is dismissing those feelings shouldn't be, and they don't get it. And there are resources out there like Postpartum Support International and postpartum therapists who can help. Okay, the second thing that I have learned is that there is a wide range in quality of prenatal breastfeeding education. So, one of the questions that I ask people is, what kind of prep did you do in the prenatal period to prepare for breastfeeding? What kind of books did you read? Did you take a class? And I hear people tell me about the classes that they took. And some say, oh man, it was super helpful. And some say, oh my gosh, that was such a waste of time. Here's what I am discovering. Most likely, the class that you take at the hospital will be outright unhelpful. And there could be some amazing lactation consultant who's really trying to do great work within a hospital system. But the vast majority of the time, the people who are within hospital systems aren't seeing amazing physiological baby feeding again and again. And they themselves may not be fully educated, or their scope of what they're seeing continuously is from parents who have had lots of interventions due to policies which impact parents and babies. And so then their attitudes towards physiological breastfeeding, human milk feeding have now become tainted. And so they then bring that into their breastfeeding education courses. So I suggest that if you really want to empower yourself to come in to feeding your baby, whether it's your first, your second, your third, especially if you had an experience that left you feeling really disempowered previously, um, and you would like to get some education, you would like to kind of create a plan for yourself moving into your next experience and kind of get ready, seek out a private practice lactation consultant and talk to a few, because like anyone else, lactation consultants vary in their own philosophies and in how well they interact with their clients. And so talk to a few and then decide who it is you're going to land on for that prenatal education. And many insurance companies will pay for private prenatal education. And I would love to be the person who does this for you. So if you would like to book a consult with me, I'll leave that information in the show notes. My website is quabbinbirthservices.com. You can reach out to me. I would love to be the person who provides caring, non-judgmental, individualized prenatal education to help you really get to what it is that you're going to do once you have your baby. Of course, I can do that for you once you already have your baby as well. But when it comes to prenatal education, it's really important to have somebody who is a great listener, who can help you determine kind of how you're going to set yourself up for success. And we can probably do that through insurance. So reach out. I would love to be that person for you. The next thing that I have really begun to chew on as I listen to people tell their baby feeding stories on the Milk Making Minutes is that birth setting matters. If you are in a place where the providers are generally really educated, all providers, not just the provider you have been doing your prenatal education with, because as we know, once you give birth, there are so many other people who are touch points, who are providing care for your family, that the general education of the staff is really important. So they need to care about your feelings and your concerns. They need to remember that this experience is yours and that it is sacred for you, no matter how many babies that they have seen initiate feeding, no matter how many births they have attended. And so if there is a feeling of your decision making mattering and your thoughts about what you want to do with your baby mattering, great. If you kind of are feeling dismissed as you're asking questions, as you're exploring your options, as you're coming to your provider with your own questions and with your thoughts and ideas, if there is no time to ask those questions, that's a red flag. That probably means that you are being set up to go down a cascade of interventions that could affect both the birth and the baby feeding outcomes. So just be aware that that is one of those systemic barriers that gets in the way of us feeling really good about our baby feeding experiences. And this is kind of connected, but provider attitudes matter. There are some studies about provider attitude about baby feeding being more important than almost anything else in a hospital setting. So if a nurse, a doctor, a midwife generally feels good about breastfeeding, if their own experiences were good about breastfeeding, then they're going to provide better care when it comes to a person who wants to breastfeed. If, however, they have seen time and time again people who struggle with breastfeeding, if they themselves struggled, then they are not going to provide as high quality care and they are not going to help a person really get to their goals as much. And this is not just from the Milk Making Minutes. There are research studies that I can link which show that provider attitude matters. So I'll have those in the show notes. My fifth conclusion that I'm coming to after so many episodes of doing the Making Minutes is that no one can predict how baby feeding will turn out for them. This applies to the first baby, to the second, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth babies. Every baby is different. Every person is different. And every life situation is different at the time you have that baby. So you just don't know how it's going to turn out for you. You can educate yourself. You can get the right providers in place. You can set yourself up for success, but we just don't know. We can't predict it. There are so many barriers that get in the way, and all you can do is your best. That's all you can do. And you do the best with the information you have in front of you at the time. And then it goes back to point number one. Whatever happens for you, it's okay to have whatever feelings you have about it and to get the support you need to process those feelings. And a good lactation consultant can help you do that. And if you need some help processing your feelings, if you have questions about what went wrong for you, I'm happy to be that person for you. And we can probably go through insurance to have some lactation counseling sessions if you're still feeding your baby. Now, so number 6, most care providers are not educated on breastfeeding. This applies to pediatricians, it applies to OBGYNs, it applies to nurses in the hospital. Now, I'm saying most. So your provider might have sought out additional breastfeeding education, and that is something that you can ask them. How much breastfeeding education do you have? Are you qualified to be the person giving me advice about breastfeeding? But when somebody goes to med school, they receive between 3 and 9 hours of breastfeeding education. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's like taking a couple of classes. And lactation science is extensive, and it's made more extensive because we almost lost it culturally. And so it requires even more education than what people needed 100 years ago to be able to feed their babies. Because when you see it anywhere and everywhere, you're exposed to it way more often. The people around you can give better, more solid advice that actually helps with milk supply. But when it's been lost, this is a systemic barrier, and so now the people who we go to for medical advice, um, they need to be trained in lactation education. And what's even made more clear to me is that most of these providers do not refer out to lactation consultants. And then to go with this point, lactation consultants are like any other provider. They vary in skill. They vary in skill and they vary in attitude towards the range of possibilities when it comes to breastfeeding. And so if you are working with one that isn't helpful, you do not have to keep working with them. If you are working with a lactation consultant who makes you feel bad about your baby feeding choices, you do not have to keep working with that person. You can find somebody else. If they are within the hospital system, you can find a private practice lactation consultant. If your private practice lactation consultant is really not aligning with your goals, if they are using language which makes you feel dismissed or misunderstood, or if they are not understanding what your goals are when it comes to feeding your baby, you can find a different one. And then number 7, we all want the best for our babies, and that includes you. We are all trying our best to feed them in the ways that are healthiest for them and for us. I truly believe this. And no matter what choice you make, you are a good parent. You are doing your best. And so I just want you to carry that with you as you make the choices you need to make that work best for you, for your mental health, for your baby. And you're just going to keep making the best choices you can at any given moment. So as we close, if you would like to join a group of people who are trying to figure out why breastfeeding is so difficult, I invite you to my Milk Making Minutes community group. That's where we talk about all these systemic barriers to get to kind of the bottom of where these issues stem from. And then as the community builds, we're going to be creating solutions for these problems. So I hope to see you there in the Milk Making Minutes community group on Facebook.